who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Cunavang, it does. They need me.
Welcome to End of Dragons Daily. We're on part 20 today, the show in which we meet up each evening and have a bit of fun discussion about the upcoming expansion, all the different stuff that the devs could do. Now, today I don't really have a precise topic. I've just got a bunch of responses I really want to get to for you all. The footage in the background is the Mithril chest in World vs. World now, I think. But hey, it's a little bit more interesting because I'm playing with tonics again. I have this weird thing with Guild Wars at the moment, man, where I just really love diving into those weird assets that most people don't often see. Now, look at how much detail is on some of these tonics. I know I bang on about it a lot, but I really feel like it's so underappreciated. You could use this stuff so well. I honestly think one of my dream jobs would be to take all these assets and like reconfigure them into a new game, because you could do it, and in a way that people appreciate it all more. You guys aren't even getting the audio, so many of these have got cool sound effects and stuff. Anyway, maybe one day I'll do that top 10 tonic video idea, I guess. Time will tell. Anyway, let's move on. First of all, a quick comment and a thank you from me, really, about the metadata discussion we had on the obscure screenshots. Like, where did we get the titles for some of that art? And, you know, those titles could be hints as to stuff in the X-Pack, and I couldn't figure it out. Well, Relife here said you can see the metadata of the files. It's in the zip by going to properties and then going to the details tab. So I guess I overcomplicated it. I was using a whole different software suite to properly examine a lot of the details, and I couldn't see anything. But yeah, the Windows list right there, the title of the art. So maybe I'll be able to do that in the future and we won't miss any hints, or other people in the community can at the very least. Next we've got Fenwe10, who says, going back to the stand-in commander gender thing, in the season 3 trailers it was Jennifer Hale who seemed to be voicing the commander. So Heart of Thorns and Season 3 basically had a female Sylvari as their stand-in, even though there was no character model for her. And that just gives me a guess that the next commander for End of Dragons would be a male, if we go by that pattern. I want to be clear, I never said this on our previous mention of this topic, they don't have to be following a pattern. I think with something like this, they just have to do what will market the game best, what will, you know, resonate with people, and leave it there. The whole Path of Fire stand-in thing is weird to me as well, because when I look at the actual launch of Path of Fire as an expansion, a lot of the trailers, you know, those like Elite Specialization trailers and all that stuff they did, came out in such a blur, such a frenzy, such a flurry, that a lot of it was kind of not really scrutinized or not really thought about, I think, by at least the incumbent user base. Maybe the press and marketing they did for POF was actually amazing, but from where I was sitting, I felt like it could have been done a lot different, and it doesn't really matter what the stand-in was in the first place. And yeah, if you look back to the vanilla marketing, if you look at the Heart of Thorn stuff, Season 1, they didn't do such a thing. So, you know, it's kind of a bit whatever to me. I'm mostly excited about the topic just in terms of, hey, what elite spec will they be holding? I do think that that could give us some interesting thoughts. Though, again, one of you guys had another comment that apparently Duncan, the Hollowsmith, had a dagger in the early stuff. So, you know, we wouldn't have been able to tell anything, really, because Hollows don't use dagger. But, you know, maybe they'll be more consistent on the next one. Or maybe in early development, dagger was Hollow's weapon, not sword. They're kind of close. Sir Gaff has a great point here, which leads me into a fun discussion I've been wondering about. I really hate that in the new End of Dragons trailer, Cunavang's voice actor is a sexy young voice, when in Guild Wars 1, Cunavang's voice actor was like an old hag. So there's a lot we can talk about here. Something similar actually happened with Glint too. If you listen to Glint in Guild Wars 1, she does sound very different to her Guild Wars 2 voiced appearances. I think a lot of this really comes down to, first, like, the texture of that voice, the aesthetic of it, maybe that doesn't resonate with people and they were worried about it, so they wanted to do something a little bit more mainstream. But also, you got to consider it's been a long time since Guild Wars 1 and Factions, the Cunavang voice was originally shot. A similar thing, and they might just want to get new voice actor in there at this point. A similar thing happened with Glint. Now, this is kind of funny. I remember watching an ArenaNet live stream in which they explained the Guild Wars 2 voice actress for Glint was the same as the Guild Wars 1 voice actress for Glint. And that's great to hear. You know, any consistency between the games like that and that the same people and talents are around is very heartening, right? And this was very recent. This was when Glint was appearing in the story for the Season 4 stuff. But I remember watching that stream and thinking, oh, that's very cool, but they sounded different. Like, Glint in Guild Wars 2 sounds younger than Glint in Guild Wars 1. Glint in Guild Wars 1 had this same thing that Kunavang did. She sounded ridiculously old and croaky. So I thought, well, they got the same voice actress, but they wanted to, you know, tidy up the voice a bit, so to speak, make her sound just that little bit more legible, even though it was the same person. Well, here's the weird thing. Even though ArenaNet said that, I think it was Ruby on the stream said it was the same voice actress, and nobody, like, questioned her on that. According to the wikis, they are different voice actresses. The woman that was voicing Glint in recent Guild Wars 2 stories is Jocelyn Blue. She was the voice for Air Stagalkin. And a little bit more recently, she did some more contemporary characters too, like Zia the Radiant. Don't forget, Air herself was appearing voice acted in the game fairly recently because of her appearance from the Mists in Season 4. That wasn't too far ago, guys, particularly in terms of the story. So, yeah, that's Jocelyn Blue. She did Glint. But in the original game, it was something completely different. It was Susan Silo. She did 2 voices for Guild Wars 1. She did Glint and also one of the White Mantle Justicars, Justicar Turan. So I don't know how by the time of the stream afterwards, Ruby and co were confused about it and thought it was the same woman. It was different. And, you know, I think it's just because, guys, we're talking about a decade here. It was probably really hard for them to get Susan back. And I would expect maybe it'll be hard to get the original Kunavang voice actress back too. Now, looking around, I can't figure out who voiced Kunavang. Was it Susan as well? Because she did such a convincing, like, ancient old lady kind of character. She just put a little bit more of an accent on there or something, and she did both. I can't really see. Maybe someone out there has that information. And so anyway, going to this trailer, I remember watching the End of Dragons trailer for the first time, being amazed to hear the word Kunavang, because I had no idea while I was watching the trailer that I was listening to a conversation with Kunavang in it. Like, it didn't sound like Kunavang at all. And as soon as that came in, it was like a mind blow to me. I went back and listened. So there is another option. Now, I kind of like this idea. Maybe we're not listening to modern era Kunavang. Maybe what we're listening to is a flashback of some kind. So, obviously, the Iceboot Saga has given us the visions, and there's this idea that Aurene can look through the past and she's searching things out. I've been wondering a lot about how we end up swapping and pivoting over to wanting to go to Cantha. And a big part of me thinks it could just be this abrupt moment where Aurene looks in the scrying pool and she's like, look, I've seen something. And we get a vision. And the vision is, you know, this thing with these bubble effects or whatever that we're seeing from this screenshot. And it's a vision from a long, long, long time ago. It's a conversation between these ancient entities. And it's Kunavang, but it's Kunavang when she was young. That's why she sounds young at this point. And, you know, it's not what it seems. We watch the trailer and we assume that that's happening right now. But I don't know about that. I think it could be a conversation between Kunavang and Mother, you know, from way back, and Aurene's just digging it out. And that's why she sounds the way that she does. So that's kind of where my money is at the moment, and that leaves the devs able to be consistent if they want with a really croaky old Kunavang. I also like the idea, if this is a flashback, the trailer is a flashback and we just didn't realize it. I like the idea that we'll have like another Vlast thing, where Kunavang influences the story, but she's dead during it. Like, I like the idea that between the previous 250 years, Kunavang was killed. Somehow, maybe because of the Elder Dragon rising, it led to a lot of fear in the Canthans, and they turned their swords on her or whatever. Maybe they ended up allying with the Deep Sea Dragon, and Kunavang says, no, don't do this, but the Canthans ignore her, and then they end up taking her out. There's any number of reasons why she could be dead, and I just think that would be kind of fun, especially after so many people were grumpy with Vlast's death in Path of Fire. For the devs to say, no, screw you, this was a cool idea, to do it again, well, I think would be sort of awesome. Or maybe I'm just obsessed with this idea of that serpentine dragon style, you know, the East Asian dragon look, which Kunavang and the Salt Sprays are, to just sort of see her dead with 100 swords in her and blood pooling around as she's draped over some statue or something. I think that would be amazing. But we're fully into headcanon territory now. I'm not actually saying she will be dead. There's no reason to believe that. A quick note about my plan to host episodes in podcast mode a day early over on Patreon. Smashdead says, as a patron, albeit just a $5 one, I think that putting this up a day earlier there is a bad idea. This series is about you interacting with the commentators, and artificially delaying that interaction by a day lessens its sum. Sure, you already recorded it a day earlier, then it's not that bad. Well, look, sometimes I end up responding to comments that are like 2-3 days old. You know, if it really fits in a different discussion or we're like 2 topics ahead. So, yeah, there's always that little bit of a delay. But maybe you're right, and I'm open to you being right. At the end of the day, if this doesn't cause any change, then, you know, we can stop doing it. I'll see how it looks over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I got 2 new people joined Patreon yesterday. 2 people, which is cool as hell, and I want to say thank you to those 2 people. But, you know, if that's it, and then in 3 weeks I'm just doing this extra stuff to host it over there and it's not creating any movement, then, you know, I'll stop. We'll just see what works and what doesn't. But I do have my mind on that. Bryce comes back by saying the first picture was giving me Dominion of Wind Tengu vibes. Now, this is a really good point I hadn't really thought of. I mentioned the Great Northern Wall. I like the idea that they're giving us some kind of screenshot or some kind of art early that does have the Dominion of Winds, because I think that would generate a ton of hype. It just, stylistically, architecturally, I'm not quite there. But this would be a great idea for ArenaNet to do. I think the second they show that would be a real tip of the hand that maybe there is going to be some kind of big Tengu element to this expansion. Whether that's playable Tengu or what, I don't know. But there is not necessarily any hard and fast reason why the Dominion of Winds has to open up this X-Pack. In theory, they could leave it completely aside, and they don't have to lean into the Tengu at all. In theory, they don't. But if in these days, they gave us a bit of concept art that looked a lot like that, or maybe the door opening or something, that would be huge. In fact, I can imagine as like a stinger scene for an upcoming trailer, being just that gate, or one of the gates to the Dominion of Winds, and the door slowly starts opening. People would know the significance of that, and that would be very, very hype. I don't know whether I'm getting that from this exact screenshot, I'm afraid. Pablo said, I wonder why our Dragon of Healing didn't debrand the branded Forgotten. What they would be incredibly helpful. Did they all die with Krauke? Yeah, this is one of those things where you could in theory have asked this question a long time ago. Like, why haven't we de-risened many of the Risen now that we have the Altar of Gloss? The devs haven't touched on it because it's too powerful of a thing. It's too much to look into, and they're obviously shy of it. And I think that you could say the same for the branded Forgotten that we now know are around in the desert. Especially since, what, Grothmar, and we've seen what Aurene can do. I don't really think of her as a Dragon of Healing, but they showed that interaction with the brand, right? And so, why don't they do that with the Forgotten? Didn't Grothmar as well, though, basically say that there aren't really many branded left at all anymore? What, hadn't the Char chained up that Siege Devourer? Specifically because it was one of the only remaining ones, and they were kind of celebrating that. So perhaps they did all die. Perhaps they all fell apart. Perhaps they all were lost in the battle, which is a shame, but I feel like the devs really want the Forgotten to remain this distant ancient thing, just like all the other ancient races, with the sole exception of being the dwarves. But hey, maybe throughout the end of the Iceboot Saga, and we're getting these new allies in, maybe Cleansed Forgotten can be a thing one day. They don't have many releases to go for it, though. Finally, we've got Jared, who says, in regards to making Cantha a faraway land, imagine we get there and it's entirely technologically advanced, even beyond the main Tyrian Asuran standards. We find out there's a Canthan Asuran who are working alongside the human Canthans, who are already pretty far along during the factions playthrough. I would like to imagine somewhat a Canthan version of a Techno-Tokyo art style that is often seen in futuristic Japanese art. Okay, so as to the Canthan version of a Techno-Tokyo art style, you're kind of slow on the uptake on this one, because before all this End of Dragons stuff, and we really realized we were going to be going to Cantha, for years and years and years, one of the most widely speculated ideas was that the whole nation is now technologically advanced. And it had been a kind of a subtle idea ever since the Winds of Change stuff, and we saw how much the world had moved, moving into Guild Wars 2 over the 250-year gap. But particularly, a lot of discussion came around this when some art leaked out from ArenaNet showing a technologically advanced city. I'll throw the screenshot on screen for you guys now who are watching on YouTube. This thing here, this is ArenaNet art, and people thought, hey, maybe that's Cantha. Turns out this was probably a cancelled project. This is likely to be a part of the project I was talking about with the whole sci-fi MMO they might have wanted to be juggling. My theory is that when Wildstar came around, that kind of put the boot into whatever this was going to be. But a lot of people thought it was Guild Wars, naturally, and they thought, hey, maybe this is Cantha. And you got to remember, in those early days, we all thought that Cantha would be the first expansion anyway. So nowadays, I don't really believe in it so much. Not since the End of Dragons press has started, and we've seen glimpses of Kaineng, and it still looks very much like Guild Wars 1 Kaineng. So you might have a little bit more technology there. You'll certainly have more access to magic. So I would expect some augmentations, but nothing too dramatic, really. I do like, though, a part of your comment here to do with the Asura, because we do know that the Asura are around there. There was the Asura Gate underneath the city, and the Inquest can be written any way you want. So, yes, they could have had one of the big plays the Inquest has been making this whole time is way down there. Maybe the Inquest has been pulling the strings from the background like some kind of shadow council that's very Asura. These all work, and I'm kind of in favor of them, but I have to say another part of me isn't in favor, just because we've seen so much Inquest stuff in all the seasons, in all the expansions, everywhere. It's like the Inquest is so easy to write in that the devs have played that hand already a million times, and I kind of think maybe we don't do the Inquest on this one. I like the idea of there being Norn influence down there. That would be very left out of field and exciting to me. But as for the other races, maybe they are isolated from this continent and they just don't know. It'd be even cooler to see the ministries have actually managed to subjugate the Asura, you know, the reverse way around. And that makes sense given the lore that we've had so far. And it would be interesting to see the Inquest with the foot on their back for once. And that they tried to manipulate, but they weren't able to. And that would show a little bit of strength of these people. I'd be more in favor of a story like that, but you never know what ArenaNet will go with. So there you have it, guys. That's the end of Dragons Daily for today. A little bit lower on the runtime for once. I'm not running over. And a big part of that is because I'm trying to shoot a new video, which I hope to have done by the end of the day. But you never know. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoy. Don't forget to continue making your case and your argument for whether Heart of Thorns style of expansion was better or the POF style of expansion was better in terms of open world and meta events and all that stuff. Hope you have a great day. If you're desperately eager, don't forget the next episode is already live on Patreon. Link in the description. And I'll see you tomorrow.